Okay, you're recording.
Okay, tell everyone. Good morning. We have new technical equipment for our Zoom, and it was donated by Mr. David Pine. And I'd like to thank him greatly for so doing. And I hope that a great deal of Torah will be spread because of these advances in technology. This week's Parsha, Parsha Bo. So the story of Yetzias Mitzrayim is recounted for us. We will recount it in detail on the Seder night of Pesach. In the Torah it says, in the Haggadah rather, it says, Matzah zu shonu ochlim al shuma. Why do we eat matzah on Pesach? And the Bal Haggadah uses the answer that's provided in one of the psukim of the Torah, that lo yochulu hismameya, the Jewish people couldn't delay, they were driven out, and they didn't have any food, and they didn't have time to bake their food correctly. You went out from Egypt to chipazon. Now, the word chipazon does not appear often in the Torah. And it has a very nuanced meaning. Simple meaning is hurriedly. But it has a nuance that you would say prematurely. So the Gemara asks, Chipazon the man. Whose chipazon are we talking about? And there are three answers that are given in Jewish tradition. One is chipazon the Mitzrayim. The Egyptians behaved hurriedly. The Egyptians reacted in such an immediate fashion. Pharaoh said, get out, go down. He objected even to the fact that Moshe wanted to wait till the morning. So we could understand that because there's a plague and thousands of people are being killed. So the earlier that we can get the cause of the plague, in other words, the Jewish people, out of our communities, so we're saving lives. And therefore we would understand that the Egyptians were b'chipazon, that they acted hurriedly. But there's a deeper nuance here. Because we see, upon reflection, a week later, Pharaoh picks up his army and pursues the Jewish people to bring the plague back to them. So chipazon here means that he didn't reflect. He didn't think it through. Because later it'll say, Mazo Sosinu, Yishilachnu et Yisrael Me'avdeinu. The Egyptian economy cannot afford that the Jewish people should leave. Who's going to do the work? So upon reflection, they wanted the Jewish people back. Now, when they want the Jewish people back, they realize how much trouble the Jewish people have caused them over the past year. They're well aware of the 10 plagues. Nevertheless, people often make a reckoning of things that they're willing to undergo pain and deprivation because in the long run they think it'll be better for them. Most of the time those are false calculations, but that is the way human beings think. And therefore, the Gemara says, the Egyptians acted hurriedly. They acted without thinking it through, so to speak, without coming to a rational decision. They behaved emotionally. Well, when one behaves emotionally, then mistakes are often the result. So, chipazon of Mitzrayim is the irrationality of human beings. And the fact that human beings don't operate on a long-term basis, but they operate only on a short-term basis. I have a story that I tell, I've told it over the last 40 years, but there may be somebody that hasn't heard it yet. And those who have heard it have undoubtedly forgotten it. So I was once invited to speak for the Federation in Pittsburgh. And I came, and there was a very fine woman that waited for me. And she works for the Federation. She's going to drive me to my hotel. And we started to walk to the parking lot. And she said, you know, I have a white Honda. This, she even said the license number. And she said, I'm in row 3, stall 12. So we went to row 3, stall 12, and no Honda there. So if it would have been New York or Chicago, I would have understood what happened. But Pittsburgh is civilized. So she said, I'm sure it was row 3, stall 12. I said, well, she said, well, let's walk through the parking lot. Oh, boy. So we walked through the parking lot looking for this white Honda. And didn't show up. So a half hour later, and she's flabbergasted. And she says, I have to call my husband. He'll come pick us up. So I said, don't worry, we'll go back to the terminal. I'll take a cab. You'll sort it out. We're walking back to the terminal, and a car pulls up alongside. And he rolls down the window, the driver, and he says, I can't find the parking space. Let me drive you to your car and I'll take your space. So we get in the car. He said, where are we going? And she says, Ms. Nochamo, Road 3, stall 12. So he says, just 1 minute. Can I see your parking ticket? So she gives him the parking ticket. And he says, I know what the problem is. We're in the short-term lot and you're parked in the long-term lot. And he drives us to the long-term lot. And sure enough, in row 3, stall 12, is her white Honda. We got in the car, she's very embarrassed. She says, Rabbi, what do you think of this? So I said, Jewish people are always parked in the long-term lot. And we never park in the short-term lot. So chipazon means you're in the short-term lot. And so that's what the Mitzrayim did. They parked in the short-term lot. And the chipazon represents that error, that hurried, irrational, emotional decision. That's one pshat the Gemara says. The Gemara says the second idea, that the chipazon is from heaven. Heaven was in a hurry. What does that mean? So Rashi already introduces us to that concept, that there are 50 levels of tuma, of filth, spiritual filth. And if one, God forbid, sinks into the 50th, and then you can't pull them out anymore. It's like a quicksand. And Rashi points out that the Jewish people in Egypt had sunk into the 49th level. Now, our father, Avraham, in the Brit Bein HaBetarim, so he heard that they said, Kiger Yezaracha, Beretz Lo Lahem Arba Meot Shana. You're going to be 400 years. They were not 400 years here. They were only 210. So we say in the Haggadah, HaKadosh Baruch Hu Chishav Esaketz, Rebbeinu Shalom, so to speak, somehow manipulated the time that they have to be in exile. And Kates is 190, Kuf Tzadik. And he subtracted 190 from the 400, and therefore it was 210. And so therefore they could go out. So the chipazon is the way heaven figured it. Heaven was in a hurry. And Forshim explained that what happened was that the shiabud of Mitzrayim, the slavery in Egypt, was of such a horrendous nature that it was as though they would have been 400 years. In other words, in the quality, if we can use that word, the intensity of the slavery equaled 400 years, even though chronologically it only equaled 210 years. And had the Jewish people been forced to wait longer, they would have sunk into the 50th level of uncleanliness, and then they would be almost irredeemable. So the idea here is that heaven sometimes sees, and that's true for an individual as well as for a people, sometimes sees there's a moment of salvation. There's a moment that the person can still be saved. If one lets that moment go, so then many times the person cannot be saved anymore. That's true physically, it's true economically, financially. So it's true in the realm of the spirit as well. We say on Yom Kippur, Yom Echad Vashana, the unique day of the year. Because that day you can still be saved. If you let that day go by, if Yom Kippur goes by and nothing, so then who knows if you can ever be saved again. So it's the chipazon of heaven. Heaven was in a hurry. Heaven felt that it couldn't wait. And therefore it redeemed the Jewish people early. And we say, the Gula of the Jewish people from the exile will resemble the Gula that occurred in Mitzrayim. It's also b'chipazon. You can't let it go further. You let it go further, there's no Jewish people. They're gone. So heaven has a different timetable, so to speak. Different way of measuring what has to be done now. So to save them from going into the 50th level of Tumah, so Ribono Shel Olam juggled the figures, so to speak. He made 210 equal 400. And the Jewish people were redeemed. So that's the second level of chipazon. There's a chipazon of the Mitzrim, but there's also a chipazon of heaven. That it contracts time, so to speak. There's a third level of chipazon, and that's the chipazon of the Jewish people. Says, they could not delay. What does it mean, lo yochlu? They could not. So the Meforshim say that the situation was such that they couldn't wait anymore. The Jewish people would have never gone out if they didn't go then. There's a moment. So it's interesting from here, Chazal Darshan, the concept that we have of Zrizi Magdilim Lemitzvahs. That when it comes to do a good thing, a person should do it early, enthusiastically, on time. Mitzvah haba liyodcha al tach mitzena. Says in the Pasuk, Ushmartem es hamatzos, al tikrei matzos el mitzvos. Don't make the mitzvahs chometz. Don't let it just sit there. I got time. That's why we have customs to make a brit milah in the morning, to do other things early. It's the concept that something important should be done right away. Jewish people have been in Egypt for centuries. Even if we say it's only 210, 210 is a long time also. They're accustomed to Egypt. Not only that, they're accustomed to slavery, the nature. I remarked this week when we learned that after the American Civil War, the majority of slaves remained on the plantations of their masters, even after they were emancipated. You get a certain mindset. You're accustomed to certain things. That's probably what the Gemara means when it says that a large section of the Jewish people never left Egypt. They didn't go because they're accustomed to it. And because of the fact that we're accustomed to things, so even under the worst of circumstances, that we find it hard to leave. People always rationalize. We always ask, well, didn't the Jews in Europe before World War II, didn't they see what was coming? That's an unfair question. But what is certain is that when you live in Poland for 800 years, it's very hard to pick up and leave Poland. And I'm not just talking economically that you owned an apartment building or that you had the professorship at Warsaw University. Psychologically, it's very hard. So the Jewish people, if they thought it over rationally, weren't going to leave Egypt. Especially where they're going to go. Go to the trackless desert. So the only way the Jewish people could leave is b'chipazon, by not thinking it through. That's what the Navi tells us, the Navi Yirmiyahu. Zacharti lo chesed nurayich, ahavas kulav soyach, lechtei chacharai b'midbar, beretz lo zruah. So why does the Navi use that metaphor? It's the metaphor of a young couple in love. Okay, so he's in the kollel. She didn't finish her college degree. The parents don't have any money. So if you think it through, you say, it's nice knowing you. But that isn't what happens. Because when you're in love with the person, and there's an emotional attachment, so then you say somehow, it's all going to work out. We'll see what it'll be. We're going to make it. And that's what the Jewish people said. That's what God said to them. I remember when we first got married, right? We're going into a trackless desert. And you went. So then that's the chipazon of Klal Yisrael. And we find that by Matan Torah, they said, Na'aseh v'nishma. We'll do, and then we'll figure out what we're doing. Well, Havdil, Nancy Pelosi said when they passed Obamacare, so the bill had 2,400 pages to it. So she said, first we'll pass it, then we'll read it. So that's what we said by the Torah. Now I say, yeah, we're going to do it. Nishma, then we'll find out what it's about. So the Gemara there says, Mihigid Razel Lebonai, who told this is the secret of the angels? That you plunge into something out of love, out of emotion, out of chipazon. So the Jews that had chipazon were the ones that left Egypt. The Jews that did not have chipazon, they stayed and they're gone. There's no vestige of them remaining. The impracticality of Jewish survival is itself the greatest testimony to the Jewish people. We can say that regarding the state of Israel as well. The state of Israel was declared b'chipazon. The vote in the Jewish agency was 6-4. Whether it declared a state or not. And you looked at it in paper, it couldn't be. You got 5 Arab armies, you got England, you got, nobody sells you arms. How can it be? You got 30 million Arabs and you got 600,000 Jews. So it has to be chipazon. So that's the chipazon of the Jewish people. So we have here these 3 different situations of chipazon that together form the Yontiv of Pesach. And that's what matzah represents. And that's what the Torah wanted us to see. From it, we learn all sorts of lessons. If we be clever enough to observe correctly. But the concepts are clear. And therefore, I I have a grandson now. He's a Rebbe in the yeshiva. He's grown. He's got children. But when he was 3 years old, so he came to us for a Seder. When it came time to eat the matzah, so he said that the people should be quiet because he wanted to hear what the matzah had to say. And I thought that was, that's my brilliant grandson. Because the matzah has what to say. It has what to tell us. And that's what the Torah says. So if we remember these concepts of chipazon, so then we have learned a great lesson about life and about the Jewish future as well. Shabbat shalom, everyone. Stay well.
I don't hurry. I don't.